I've got this one circled as a possible fight of the night for this weekend at featherweight. We have lights out Austin Lingo making his second start outside of Texas in as many fights. This is a guy that just kept fighting at home. He's going to be taking on Luis Saldana, a guy that finishes more often than not, and I don't know about outside the cage, but this guy is a proven finisher inside of it. This is an absolutely great fight, and for Luis Saldana, we talked extensively about his background before he went into his UFC debut against Jordan Griffin. We're going to throw it back to the 15-minute card breaks, rookie review, then we're going to get it back, talk about Austin Lingo, how this matchup comes together, and offer up a pick and prediction. You're not going to want to miss that rookie review. And it's an interesting one for Luis Saldana, a guy coming in here at 30. He started his pro career 10 years ago, grinded away in the minor leagues. He's got an overall record of 14-6. He's like the Yermin Mercedes of MMA. And listen, the hit streak couldn't continue for Mercedes, but it could for Saldana in this fight. He's got a really interesting one ahead of him. And if you look at his overall body of work, all of those 14 wins are by finish. That's absolutely insane. 6 by knockout, 8 by submission. A guy coming at us from Fight Ready MMA in Arizona. And we've talked about Fight Ready before, and we're going to talk about Fight Ready even more with Santino DeFranco, and he's training with Camuela Kirk, and I think that's really going to help him in a fight like this. Take on a guy in Jordan Griffin. For Luis Saldana, he can definitely get the submission. Again, 8 of his overall 14 wins by submission. His overall level of competition, not as high as that of a Jordan Griffin. I mean, we're talking losses to Mike Santiago. Yes, that guy that fought in the UFC that time back in 2016. But if you look at the recent win streak for Luis Saldana, 4 in a row. He had that Carl Wittstock win that looks great from LFA 60. Took some time off, and then fought Vince Murdoch on Contender Series. And it was a weird one, because Murdoch was a guy, he already had a contract, he was supposed to fight in the UFC. Do you know he's supposed to fight in the UFC?
Who?
Jordan Griffin. He was supposed to fight Jordan Griffin in Milwaukee. It didn't happen. Murdoch had that weird health scare, and then these guys fought. And Luis Saldana bodied him up, and pieced him up, and finished him with an insane front kick, and then just pounded away. Well, he basically was sitting on his face. I wish I never said that on this channel, but I did. And then he just hammered away in his face. Luis Saldana, triple threat. Love the fight. This is a good one. So recently, the judges are a big bone of contention for a lot of people. I thought Ty Guerder beat Haji Bastayev over with Bellator. You probably thought that Clay Collard beat Hausch Manfiel over with the PFL last week. And we had picks and predictions on those. But Matt, for Luis Saldana's last fight out, I had Jordan Griffin to win. You had Luis Saldana to win. And Matt, the referees that we had in that fight, Adelaide Bird, Derek Cleary, and who was it? Junichiro Kamijo. There were 29-28s for Luis Saldana, and he ended up winning that fight over Jordan Griffin. That one was by unanimous decision. The votes over on MMA decisions.
Don't even get me started.
2 people had 29-28 Saldana. 16 had it 29-28 Griffin. For Luis Saldana, he got taken down a lot and Jordan Griffin really pressured him, but he gets an opportunity to right the ship here. I know it's a win and he's on a lovely win streak, but an opportunity to really kind of prove the naysayers wrong. He's taken on a really tough fighter in Austin Lingo at a Fortis MMA, and there's a lot of reasons why I love this fight. What makes you so excited for this one?
Why are we saying that Luis Saldana had a really close fight against a super good veteran in his UFC debut? Because that's honestly the way that you should look at it. I know he got taken down, but this is the problem.
Super good.
Jordan Griffin's a good litmus test for a lot of guys coming into the UFC. We were talking about before how Max Griffin is way too much. He's too hot on the Goldilocks standard.
On the level of Griffins, Max is up here.
Max
and
is
Jordan's
at the top.
in the middle.
Jordan's a pretty good UFC debut. And for
Where's Blake?
You gotta stop. For Blake Griffin, he was a former All-Star, now has no knees. For Luis Saldana, yeah, he got taken down by Jordan Griffin, but that is to be expected against a guy like Jordan Griffin. And honestly, it was one of those close fights that could have gone either way. It was a split decision. I kind of thought it was.
Unanimous.
I thought Jordan Griffin was probably going to walk away with a split decision by the time that fight was over, but Luis Saldana did get work done on the feet when he was able to keep it there, and that really is the thing for Luis Saldana. If you look at his record, he does have knockouts, he does have submission wins, but it's a term that we use a lot on this channel. You have defensive submissions and you have offensive submissions. With Luis Saldana, it is a bit of a mix of both, but with Saldana, it is either you make a mistake or I rock you and then I'm going to submit you. It's never he's going like Damian Maia, I'm going to try to single leg you up against the cage and then walk to your back. it is a very fun style that he does incorporate. And again, if Luis Saldana is a guy who can get on a bit of a streak, I'm sure he will gain a lot of fans just due to his fight style. Even go back, I apologize for the opponent's name, but the fight he won on Contender Series by front kick was absolutely disgusting, and that really is the thing. Vince Murdoch. My apologies, Vince. But Luis Saldana is one of those unique fighters who has really good attacks going up the middle. It's something we talked about with Ignacio Bahamondes, for instance, how he likes to throw those uppercuts up the middle. It comes a lot more natural to Luis Saldana. He has a lot more knees coming up the middle, a lot more elbows and whatnot. The comparison for Luis Saldana that I always think of, now again, I think this fighter is much better than Luis Saldana, but at least the sort of bare bones of his game, it's kind of Dan Hooker-ish, to where he does like to keep you at range. He will invest in the leg kicks. When you do try to close distance, he's using that knee a lot, and a lot of his submission wins do come from them being defensive. Even look at the Mark Chikasi fight. Like, Dan Hooker submitted Mark Chikasi. That's kind of wild, but it was just a guillotine after Chikasi crashed forward. With Saldana, though, the wrestling defense is just going to be the issue throughout his whole entire UFC debut. And against Austin Lingo, who he will play that kind of, listen, I'm going to go in there and throw bombs kind of game, but I still think Austin Lingo is the better wrestler in this fight overall. And this fight for me just comes down to game plans more than anything. If Austin Lingo's coach sits him down and says, hey, Austin, put the wrestling shoes on. We're just going in there shooting double legs off of crashing forward, then I think he could win this fight. But I do really worry about Lingo, at least with his output on the feet in this one, because Saldana is a guy who will stay active a lot on those in-betweens. He's not somebody who the commentary will say gets caught looking in the mirror. So I do think that if this fight is at distance, and if Lingo's not the one crashing forward, I do think Saldana can get good work done at range.
Yeah, and I think it's a great fight. And the reason being, Luis Saldana can be defensively sound enough with his back up against the cage. This is a guy that before beating Jordan Griffin, no matter how controversial you want to say it was, every other win was by finish. That was his first decision win. And even in the fight against Jordan Griffin, where there's a threat of getting taken down, and he did, because Griffin went 4 of 7 for his total takedown attempts and mounted 6 minutes and 18 seconds of control time. 25% of Saldana's strikes in that fight were to the leg. That's a no-no against a guy that can wrestle, and he was able to do it. Now, again, did he win? Did he not win? Well, it's a W in the win column, so that's where I'll leave it. But for Austin Lingo, he struggled against a longer fighter in his UFC debut, which, again, was his first fight outside of Texas. I can't stress that enough. He was 7-0 coming into the UFC. He was a favorite against Yusuf Zalal. I sent a message to Nolan King. I said, Nolan, I need dirt. Who have you got in this one? And he gave me a pretty good case for Yusuf Zalal. People thought I was crazy going Zalal, but I did. And then I had to reevaluate Austin Lingo when he went into his last fight. Well, what did he do when he took on Jacob Kilburn? Well, Jacob Kilburn had a rough go in the UFC.
Jacob Kilburn's not great.
He bounced him from the UFC, and now we end up with an Austin Lingo that looked good in that fight, but he's got a really tough opponent, and I can say that against a guy like Saldana. But he's been great with his takedown attempts. Zalal did get 6 of them against Lingo, but at the time, it was just an odd fight. And for Lingo over Jacob Kilburn, the numbers might be close. Go back and watch that fight. There were 2 30-26s. He looked amazing in that
He did look really good in that fight, but this is the problem. Austin Lingo isn't going to show up to this fight and just shoot double leg takedowns. It's not in his nature. I really doubt in one training camp his corner's been able to say, hey, you're going to go from getting taken down and going like 1 takedown in 15 minutes to now we're going to start shooting 4 to 5 takedowns per 15 minutes, because you don't really understand the other consequences that has on his overall game. If he is then focusing on takedowns, well, that means he's going to get more tired earlier on in the fight. Yes, he could get the takedowns, but again, Austin Lingo is not somebody like Chad Mendes who's been wrestling his whole entire life. Like, it's going to fatigue him more the more he does wrestle. And with Lingo, again, he is going to have the advantage. I just don't think that's something he's going to be able to use over and over again. I could see him winning one round, maybe one round being close because of the wrestling, but I really do feel like Saldana at range with those leg kicks, and again, with just his distance strikes overall, I do like Saldana in this fight. I do understand the hesitancy, at least, after his last performance against Jordan Griffin, but when a UFC debuting fighter is against a guy like Jordan Griffin, I think probably 20% higher of Jordan Griffin than most people do, but I think Jordan Griffin is a great first test in the UFC, and I think that's a performance that you can at least build upon.
The odds, a little strange. Saldana opened the favorite -130. The line went all the way to a -168. It's worked back up to a -132, and it's been a gradual climb for Austin Lingo. He opened at a +110. You could have had him at a +138. He's a +108 right now. So recently, Lingo's gained in terms of the odds. Topology votes, over under. What are we saying? I'm saying probably over 60% Saldana. You think?
Yeah, I'd say that. I'll say 50% say finish, no?
1,069 total votes, 78% Saldana, 78% by decision for the 22% that have Lingo, 63% by decision. I think it's going to go to decision too, and I think it's going to be another chintzy call like Saldana's last fight.
I think Saldana... If anybody gets a finish in this fight, though, it will be Saldana, because I think he's the much more damaging striker. And again, what Saldana does in his strikes, they do accumulate over time. This is the thing. If you think this fight's going to go late, that means you think that Saldana is going to land 20 leg kicks. I don't think Austin Lingo is a guy who can absorb that kind of damage to the leg. And again, those are the things that are going to accumulate as the fight progresses. So for me, I do like Saldana in this one. I think this fight could be very close, and I do think both guys are going to go on to have fairly good futures in the UFC. It's just ever so slightly I have to pick Saldana.
You want to see a disgusting finish, and you want to talk about a guy that has knockout power. Austin Lingo has that power to absolutely put your lights out with one shot. It's a Solo Hatley Jr. fight. He flatlines him early, and that's all she wrote. It's good night, Irene, like Michael Chiavello would say. I really like the game of Austin Lingo. This is one that I'm going to kind of hum and haw on all week. I get it as a 50-50 on my notes. I like Luis Saldana for his defensive abilities up against the cage. For those reasons, I like him, just because I've seen that matchup where Lingo took on a guy that had those abilities, can move side to side like a Yusuf Zalal and defend some of the takedowns. Now, having said that at the start of the video, Saldana wasn't able to do a lot against Jordan Griffin, so we'll see what he's been able to do.
He also had 2.5 minutes of control time.
With Santino DeFranco, Eddie Cha, and the guys over at Fight Ready MMA. I mean, a great team over there. Did he get any time with Korean Zombie? I don't know, but there's all sorts of great training partners over there. We're both siding with Phoenix's own Luis Saldana in this fight. You let us know down below in the comment section who you have. Is it Lingo? Is it Saldana? We got a great card coming up
It's
this
one of our
weekend.
Fight of the Night nominees.
It should be great. You're not going to want to miss those videos. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say, let's get into it.